Stand by for STU'S SHOW, coming up next. From Chatsworth, California, welcome to STU'S SHOW. 2 hours of great conversation with top celebrities from the world of television, both in front of and behind the cameras, plus your live phone calls. And now, here's the host of STU'S SHOW, Stu Showstack.
My guest, hang on one second, we're feeding back as usual. My guest today has had to listen to me have a coughing spasm for the last 5 minutes, but something magically happens when that light goes on and it says on air, and I'm able to talk at the moment. It's not going to be a problem today because my guest today is somebody who loves to talk about vintage cartoons, particularly the Max Fleischer Cartoon Studio. He's a gentleman who has been with us a couple of times before, and it's always a pleasure to have him, and I'm going to bring him on right now before we talk any further. He has relocated in the last several months. He lived out here in the Hollywood area for many, many years, and now he lives, it's really cool where he lives now. He lives on a farm in the middle of Michigan, about 40 miles outside of Grand Rapids, where it's nice and quiet and calm, and he can sit there and watch cartoons all day, although I doubt that's what he does. Would you welcome back, please, animation producer, director, and top animation historian on the Max Fleischer Cartoon Studio, Mr. Ray Pointer. Are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Stu. I'm not watching cartoons. I'm watching the snow accumulate.
Have you got snow already in Michigan?
Well, we had our first snowfall on Sunday, and none of it accumulated too heavy on the roads, but it came and went, and we've got it again. So it comes with the territory.
Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. So that's something you can experience here, although 75 miles north of where I am right now, I have my mountain house, and we do have 4 seasons up there. Sir, I want to start by thanking you once again for the wonderful show we did in July with Mr. Bernie Fleischer. I'm still getting email on that show. Bernie was, his information and his recollections were fabulous.
Well, there was just a lot of energy behind that whole thing. I think everybody can agree about that. And as always, the 2 hours just went by so quickly.
As it will today. Now, we do have some treats here for you. I am told by Ray that Ginny Mahoney, who is Max Fleischer's granddaughter, is listening in today. Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay. She's the one that basically found these old 78 recordings of the family and transferred them to CD and was kind enough to give you a copy, and you were kind enough to leave that here with me so we could play some of these rare family 78s today. Give me a little background on how you hooked up with Ginny and how these were found, if you know it.
Well, actually, it was through the family connections, primarily through Max's grandson, Mark Fleischer. And Ginny is, well, she's a great gal. We'll be hearing from her shortly, I think. She promised that she might call in.
That would be great.
But Max had a home 78 recorder. And so a lot of times he used to make his own records of his mandolin playing. And so we have a few examples of that as well. But some of these cuts were made at home, one of which was on his 58th birthday party.
Let's start with the mandolin. I want to play this for the listeners right now. And the first thing I have here says Max Mandolin with an introduction by Seymour Kneitel. Now,
right, the date on this is July 19th, 1941. So this would be Max's 58th birthday.
All right, so that means we've got 2 clips from this. The first thing is Max playing the mandolin. Now, did he take lessons as a child, or was this something that he acquired later on?
Oh, this is something that he picked up. Their father was something of a self-trained musician and taught each one of his children to play a musical instrument. So the family, in a sense, had a little home orchestra, so to speak, so they all could play musical instruments.
I got you. Now, lest anybody out there doesn't know, and I'm sure everybody does know this, Seymour Kneitel married Max's daughter Ruth, correct?
That's right.
So, and Seymour, of course, is a name that everybody recognizes from all of the cartoons, and Seymour's going to be very prominent in our timeline today because we're going to pick it up with the Paramount takeover, and Seymour ended up staying there, and there was almost a lawsuit filed there. But before we get into the heavy-duty bickering back and forth with the family, let's play the family all together and having a good time here. So this is Max's 58th birthday, and this is Seymour Kneitel introducing Max, and the next sound you hear after Seymour will be Max playing the mandolin. Let's have a listen.
Good evening, friends. This is station WMAX presenting Max Fleischer and his mechanical wife and friends.
him 2 seconds of applause there for that. He never did join Sammy Timberg's orchestra and play the mandolin for any of the cartoons, did he?
Oh, no, they use professional musicians.
Well, that sounded pretty damn good, Ray. You got to admit that. That's pretty good for a 58-year-old guy who was an animation guy and not a musician, right?
Well, another thing that should be understood is a lot of these people took music lessons. They could read music in a lot of cases. And it goes back to how people used to entertain themselves. And before you had canned entertainment, that's what you did.
Yep, you did it live. All right, so let's skip ahead a little bit and have the family present Max with his birthday cake here, and then Max is going to give a little acceptance speech. Now, this quality on this 78 is pretty scratchy. I guess they did the best they could with this, right?
Yeah, well, the thing that's interesting, though, is it gives you an insight to these people, and I know it might bring on some laughs because it sounds a little bit cartoony, but it'll give you an insight as to exactly what was behind what went into the cartoons, because there are people that were that way.
All right,
you'll get the idea when you hear them.
Yeah, all right, so here we go. And Ginny, I hope you're out there listening. Of course, she's probably heard this thousands of times, but here is Max Fleischer's family presenting him with his birthday cake, and it sounds like any other family to me, but you have a listen.
This is July 19th, 1941. We're all gathered at the Fleischer Mansion in honor of Max's birthday. How old are you, Max? 155? 25. Okay. Use your lips, though.
Happy birthday, Pop, from me and my buddy.
Happy birthday, Max. Ginny told me to question marketing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear man. Happy birthday to you.
Hi, everybody.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Papa. Happy birthday, dear man. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, everybody. Your cake was excellent.
I think there's some water on there.
That is so cool, Ray. I feel like I'm eavesdropping. I'm a little bit embarrassed by playing that, but the whole thing there is that you're right. It sounds like a cartoon.
But it's fun.
Oh, of course it's fun. Cartoons are fun.
And it gives people an idea that these were real people. There were people that were that way.
And
I think it helps make them less of an enigma.
And we figured out during that we think it was Brother Lou playing the piano since he was in charge of the music department for the studio.
Well, it's possible, but I really don't know. It could have been anybody because a lot of those people could certainly play the piano.
Right, and we think that was, what was Max's wife's name?
Essie.
Essie was the first person to sing Happy Birthday to him.
That's right.
Click.
Hi, this is Ginny Mahoney.
Well, there we go.
One last, my dear. Here we are.
It is
Hard to get through.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm glad you made it because we didn't want to have you hold on the phone for 2 hours while we got through while we were discussing your family at length here. I hope we didn't say anything out of school. How are we doing here?
Oh, you guys are doing great.
Okay. Good.
Thank you so
Thank
much. And Ray's always such a wealth of information, and I'm making notes because I'm learning as I listen.
Wow. Well, that's cool. That's my job. I had June Foray on last week, and she found out a couple of things about her voiceover career that she didn't know. So that's good. I love to hear that from people. So thank you so much for participating in the show. Do you have any questions about your family, Ginny?
No, I was just going to mention when you talked earlier about the music stuff, I was going to add that Max played the mandolin because he loved it, and he was never really great at it. But his family was like, everybody was musical, and exactly what Ray said, since there was no TV, they would sit around at nights with the children, and they would have these musical evenings, and that would be the entertainment. And that's where they all got their music background. So when you heard the records playing with the Happy Birthday and all, that was probably Ethel playing the piano. She's the one, the sibling you never hear about, but she did a lot of the piano accompaniment.
Cool. It's so great that you let us play those. I thank you so much. Now that we've got you here, let me ask you, what kind of a grandfather was Max?
Oh, Max was fantastic.
Generous and...
Well, it wasn't even that. He just had this great mind that was always interested in things. So if you expressed an interest in, like, how does a gun work, he'd be pulling books off the shelves, and he'd just stop everything he was doing to explain this to you and figure it out better himself. And if you went over to his house, I remember when I was a kid, I would be there very often. And his dining room table, you never ate at it because it was always full of whatever his current invention was. So he always had projects going, and they weren't always related to film. In fact, the last thing I'll mention, I'll let you take other calls, you were talking about what did he do in the 50s.
Yes.
Well, in the 50s, he patented his gravity motion clock, which he'd been working on most of his life, is, among other things, how to make a perpetual motion clock. So he took out a patent, and it was in the 50s, and also in the 50s, the early 50s, he started a mail-order animation school, which he ran for a number of years.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, before you go, God, I could do 2 hours with you just talking about your family. Your cousin Bernie was here back at the beginning of the summer, and we had a great time. But let me ask you about your dad a little bit. When he took over the studio and ran stuff, did you go down and ever watch the animation in the 40s, watching them make the cartoons or go to the recording sessions?
Well, yeah, actually, I did go to some recording sessions, which were, I was kind of young then. But when I was in high school, I actually worked there a couple of summers.
Wow, so cool. So you got to know Jack Mercer and May Questel and
No, I was stuck in the inking department or the opaquing department. No, I was actually just in fact, I didn't get the job through him. He would never have let me work there. I went and applied for a job, for a summer job, and that was the name of the place they gave me to apply to. So I just went over and applied through the inking department, and it was quite a surprise to him that I was working there.
Oh, that's great. So you did it without any nepotism there, but
I did.
That's
and
so cool.
It was actually really great.
We were talking about your dad at length, as you know, and just what an incredibly talented artist and person he was to draw and to do those cartoons. I got to ask you, Ray, who was the guy who did Baby Huey's voice? He just passed away a couple of years ago. What was it?
Raymond.
Yeah. What was his first name?
Sid Raymond.
Sid Raymond. Did you get to know Sid Raymond at all, Ginny?
No, I did not.
Oh, because I heard those recording sessions were crazy with him. He was an impressionist and a comedian, and just great stuff.
No, I did not know him.
Okay, well, listen, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you as a part of the show. Thank you so much for listening and for calling.
Hi, great, and hi, Ray. How are you? Okay, so listen, carry on, and I'm going to keep listening.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Bye-bye. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Ginny Mahoney, who is the daughter of Seymour Kneitel and the granddaughter of Max Fleischer. That was cool, Ray. That was very cool. Was Max ever pissed that Seymour was going to stay there after he was ousted?
No, not at all. In fact, he was pleased because he was more concerned about the welfare of his son-in-law and his daughter and so on. Max was very generous in many respects, so he was willing to take a lot of risks, but this, you can imagine, affected his health. And losing the studio, of course, with the war coming out and everything, for a short period of time, he did envision starting up another studio, but he couldn't get the money.
You mentioned, and I guess it's in the books, that Max was contemplating suing Famous for taking over the studio, even though he foolishly signed a contract that basically, gave up the ship.
He wasn't going to sue Famous. He was going to sue Paramount for breaching the contract on the grounds that they had that 10-year agreement.
So let me ask you about Max's relationship with Seymour. It was not damaged as a result of this. Didn't Ruth, Ginny's mom and Seymour's wife, beg Max not to sue because Seymour had a couple of heart attacks already?
Seymour had his first heart attack in 1940 during the initial work on Mr. Bug, and everybody was concerned about that. And so then naturally when there was the talk about the lawsuit, which by rights should have happened, Ruth begged Max not to do that simply because Seymour was in such a catbird seat position by being a star witness on Max's behalf, which would also jeopardize his position with Famous.
So he pulled back. What went wrong with Mr. Bug, Ray? Why was it such a turkey at the box office?
It wasn't so much a turkey as far as the film itself. It's just that it had the unfortunate time of its release. And it was also caught up in the complication of the initial stages of the dissolving of the block booking system, which meant that when studios would release films, they had to be previewed to their exhibitors before release so that they could negotiate which film packages they wanted to buy. Previous to that, they had to take whatever the studio sent. Mr. Bug was one of 5 films that had not yet been previewed before its release date. So even though it had a release date on the 5th of December, 1941, it had not yet gone into its general release. And so then, of course, 2 days later was Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And so that upset a lot of the plans and so forth. So its release was really delayed by 4 months. So it really didn't get a release until March. And by the time it came out, of course, it was a little too late, and it didn't get a first run release. It got a release as a second run.
Hollywood is on the air. From Hollywood, California, we bring you a musical preview of 1942's first full-length Technicolor cartoon feature, Mr. Bug Goes to Town.
Okay, I see what you're saying, and that, of course, 42. That added to the problems that the Fleischers were having with Paramount and the renewal at that point.
Well, another thing you have to keep in mind too is that when so much money is allocated, and you figure in interest rates and so forth, if the money is not starting to come in, you've got to make up for those losses after a period of time, and so that basically contributes to the additional loss of another $500,000, so they were already in debt for over $1 million.
Well, then you can understand why Paramount stepped in. They obviously wanted to keep their cartoon division going because it was still making money, but with all of this debt and all of this going on, from a business standpoint, it made sense then for Paramount to come in and say, you can't run this anymore. We've got to take this over. But
there's another factor in this. Their biggest asset was Popeye. And guess who had the license for the Popeye cartoons? It was Fleischer Studios. And if Fleischer Studios was not performing to their satisfaction any longer, and if Paramount wanted to continue the series, from a business standpoint, it was in their interest to gain control of that license and get the middleman out of the picture, which is essentially what happened. Like it or not, that's what happened from a business standpoint.
How quickly was...
The other thing, too, was the fact that the original license was for 10 years, so it would have expired in 1942, again, that pivotal year, and King Features had a perpetual contract in all of their licensing of films that they would either end up with the ownership of the films or they'd be destroyed. And so Paramount stepped in, anticipating television, to prevent these films from being destroyed.
Well, that was a good move then.
Yes.
That was a good move. How soon after Max was ousted did they close up the Miami studio and relocate to New York? Was it immediate?
My estimation is 6 to 8 months by the time they moved back, because you can imagine that there were loose ends that were left over from things that were already in progress that had to be finished, and then to organize the logistics to move back to Manhattan and find space and all that sort of thing. But one thing that Tom Kneitel told me, Seymour's son, was it was quite obvious that Paramount was not interested in putting in a lot of money into that studio. And they really cut down the staff tremendously because Max had a lot of people working for him, between 800 and 1,000 people. So they really cut the staff. They moved the key animators back up that wanted to go. And they put them in a building in mid-Manhattan, but it had this broken-down old second-hand furniture and that sort of thing, and they really weren't that concerned about having a luxurious studio, just one that was functional for their purposes.
And how was Seymour now in his new role as basically, with his 2 other partners? Was he, I guess, obviously because he lasted there so long, he did a fine job and didn't let them down, right?
Well, it was pretty much business as usual because he loved his work.
Yeah. Yeah, but he didn't have to answer to Max, so his immediate boss from this point on was who?
The managers at Paramount.
It was business as usual, just Max wasn't running things. Yeah.
That's right.
All right, so we got to move
Even
along
though
here.
There was a lot of sentiment that was lost because everybody loved working for Max, but the days were over with.
That's right. It's a shame when you think about it. Shortly after Max was ousted, the Gem Handy people contacted him, right?
Well, right. Well, what happened was the connection goes back to the Bray days. And Jameson Handy was a 2-time Olympic swimmer in 1904 and 1924. And quite naturally, a lot of Olympians have opportunities to get involved with new businesses and so on. And Mr. Handy was the salesman of industrial films for the Bray Company. And so when World War I broke out, he sold the idea to the Army to do some training films, and that brought Max in. And Max had made some of the first Army training films using animation techniques. So because of that connection, Handy contacted Max to come up to Detroit to essentially do the same thing, and there were a number of reasons for bringing him there for obvious reasons. His name carried a great deal of weight as far as the sales division was concerned because of his history. So that was his primary reason for being there, but at the same time, his arrival there was very delicate in the fact that you can imagine he had a great deal of emotional strain and upset, and I gathered that his mind was off on a lot of things. But being a creative person and so forth, creative people seem to excel when they're allowed to do what they do best.
Fax Magazine tells about the most expensive kiss on record. A lady dove sat on a high-tension wire. Her boyfriend sat on another wire. And then they kissed. And whammo! The powerhouse in the town of Phoenix, Arizona, went out of business for half an hour. The doves? Oh, well, maybe they're just as happy. Calling all fishermen. Yep, you fellas with your rods and reels. The Wildlife Service at Washington, D.C. is coming out with a new radar gadget. This doohickey will locate schools of fish, tell you which way they're going, and let you know their exact size.
Thousands and thousands of telephones to be made and all kinds of materials needed to make them. Copper, nickel, cotton, gold, silver. And from where? It's a tough job.
It ain't so tough.
That's what you think. Where did you come from?
Oh, I've been around. I know an easy way to get materials and make telephones.
You and what army?
Don't need an army. Just a little imagination. Watch. Oh, what's so funny? I got what I went after, didn't I? See? Here's copper, nickel, wax, lead, cotton, and all the others that you need.
Well, that certainly does require imagination. But how on earth are you going to make 433 telephone parts from those paper labels?
Help! Help! What did I tell you? It ain't so tough.
Yes, but your way of doing it won't help us. Imagine making telephones out of paper labels. Why, that's movie stuff.
You're not fooling, boss. That's the only place it is easy. In the movie. This is the end, folks.
I want to ask you about the one cartoon that Jam Handy did produce for theatrical release, and that wasn't Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right?
Well, that wasn't really for theatrical release. That was done for Montgomery Ward, because at the time Montgomery Ward owned that story property. And it was produced as a warm-up for children going in to see the Santa Claus in the department stores.
Oh!
They would build a little theater, and then they would bring in so many children, and then they would bring them through in 7-minute intervals to see Santa Claus.
How long was Max with the Jam Handy Company, by the way?
Well, he was there during the war years. Mm-hmm. And, in fact, during that period in 1944, he wrote a semi-autobiographical novel called Noah's Shoes, which is a thinly disguised account of his building the Fleischer Studio and then losing it.
But when did he leave?
He left apparently in the late 40s, around 1948, although there seem to be contradictions. The best way that I can pin that down is according to Gene Dyche, which would be about 1951.
We are now in the timeline in the early 50s where Max has left Jam Handy. Did he do anything of prominence in the early 50s, or was he pretty much just at liberty, as we say?
He was working up a strategy to try to sue Paramount. And it was announced in Variety on November 2nd, 1955, that Paramount had 2,000 short subjects up for sale for television. And they specified in the sale of the cartoons that Paramount's name be removed from the cartoon.
And herein...
In the case of the Popeyes that came a year later, AAP slapped their logo on the head, but the original copyright signature is still on the title frame.
Correct. And herein lies the rib, my friend, because when doing that, in stripping out all of the Paramount references, they also stripped out the references to Max Fleischer, and that's why Max got pissed, right?
That's partly it.
All right, let's
What it had to do was be one film that slipped up, because there was one stipulation in his original contracts, and I say plural, that he had legal grounds on. And so that was the basis of pursuing this lawsuit. When they put the 1952 opening of the Popeye cartoons on the head of the Popeye specials, and it just cuts to the title, Sinbad the Sailor or Alibaba, and Max Fleischer's name isn't on there at all. In fact, it says Famous Studios Production, which it wasn't. The sale of the Popeye cartoons was twofold. The first sale was all the black and white ones. There was no problem about Max's name being obliterated on those. When they went to the color ones is where the mistakes started to happen. It was such a complicated case. There were hundreds, at least 100 boxes of all the records that were involved with this. You could do 4 shows going into all the details, and it would just be sickening to even wade through all of that. It was such a litigious experience. And by the way, in December 55, Disney hosted a luncheon on Max's golden wedding anniversary.
Disney did? Oh, because Richard was directing 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
That's right.
Okay, so they were friends again. Maybe Disney didn't...
He was very content to be working on industrial films. His career had come full circle. At this point, he'd left Jam Handy. He'd gone back to the Bray studio as production manager. But he was also contemplating trying to get into television.
Was it Hal Seeger that approached Max to bring back Out of the Inkwell, or was Max looking to bring it back himself?
He wanted to do something with Betty Boop. But Betty Boop was still tied up with the complications of the Paramount properties. But when they did a search, they found out that Coco the Clown was available. So in 1958, they revitalized Max's companies Out of the Inkwell Films Incorporated, and they started the procedures to bring back Coco the Clown for television. It took a number of years to get it together, but actually it was the Berger brothers who had a company called Video House that were the backers on it.
Okay.
And by 1961-62, they finally got into production.
Okay. Now, as far as the 1960s are concerned, this series didn't do what they expected it to do, correct?
Well, I can't be sure what they were expecting it to do. The thing was that in the early 60s, there was an anxiousness on the part of television stations to acquire cheap films. and the advantage was the fact that they were in color.
Oh, that's
and
right.
There weren't that many new color cartoons available. I mean, Hanna-Barbera had the big market sewed up on that.
Yes.
But there still was a tremendously lucrative business in syndication. So I think that's what they saw, but they saw it as a short-time syndication deal.
Is the animation on these typical TV animation, is it pretty crappy compared to what Max could have done with it?
I'll tell you, it's too bad that the pilot was never aired, because the pilot was rather nice, was very nostalgic, it had Max in it, and they even had the bouncing ball songs in it and all that sort of thing.
Wow, Max was in it. Oh, cool.
funniest man who ever came to town.
rest of them, Max is not in. They're just stock shots that were from the pilot that show his hands or show him from the waist down or something like that.
Boy, you sure drew me fast, Uncle Max. I had to, Coco. I'm in a hurry.
And it's not even his voice. It's Hal Seeger's voice as Max.
Oh, my.
Max was ill.
Oh.
Couldn't participate. And he finally came out to the West Coast in 1968. It was to the point where Essie could no longer continue to take care of Max, and that was one of the things that motivated moving both of them to the West Coast, because he certainly deserved to be there so that he could be under supervised care. The rest of Max's life, he spent trying to get the rights to Betty Boop back, and that task was finally passed on to his daughter, Ruth Kneitel. And it was finally in 1972, just at the brink of his death, that they finally got the rights back to Betty Boop, simply because Paramount figured that she was a dormant character and there was no value, so they just released her to them.